Should tipping be mandatory? The purpose of this speech is to persuade you, as my listeners, to agree that tipping your server should be mandatory. Are you willing to work for $2.13 an hour? No. Well, did you know that according to the U.S. Department of Labor, that the standard hourly wage for a server is just a $2.13 per hour? Can you pay your mortgage or your car payment with that? I know I can't. Did you also know that according to the Department of Labor, a minimum amount of tips is required for servers? However, the government will assume that each guest will automatically tip their servers the correct amount, which would typically mean about 10 to 20% of the total of their bill. And if they don't, that the state that they work in is supposed to make up for that. However, only a few states are actually required by law to make up the difference if the server doesn't make a certain amount of tips a night, which would typically should equal about minimum wage. Serving is a very mentally and physically demanding job. You're on your feet all day, running back and forth to get things that your guest suddenly remembers that they need. You're carrying heavy trays, hot plates, and so much more. When the restaurant closes, the servers don't get the option just to clock out and go home. They have to get that restaurant ready for the next day for those guests that decide to come in for the lunch and dinner. And then still, while there, another hour and a half, 2 hours, your server is only making $2.13 an hour and no longer receiving tips. Also, what many fail to realize is that when you're working all night with a limited section of tables and busting your butt to ensure that your guests are receiving the best possible service, and the worst thing that can happen to them is they get stiffed, which, if you're not familiar with the server lingo, means you didn't get tipped, which just caused your server to basically work for free. Most individuals that haven't had the pleasure of serving also isn't aware that based on the amount of your bill, the server is required to tip out 3% of their own money to busboys, hosts, people who help run food to you to make sure that you receive a hot meal. So if you decide that tipping your server wasn't necessary for the excellent service that they provided you that night, again, you basically made them work for free. Now, I do understand that there are times that you will receive less than perfect service and that you may feel justified with your decision not to tip. However, you should still tip. Now, let me ask you, if you had performed below company standards at your job, would you allow your employer not to pay you for that day? No? Why not? You decide that your server didn't deserve to be paid for their service to you. According to the Phoenix News-Times, there are many different opinions about tipping servers. According to James Porter, executive chef Petite Mason, Big Earl's Barbecue, is yes. You don't have to tip if you dine out. If you do go to a restaurant where service is involved, you have agreed to tip according to the level of service you received. If you don't like to tip, then eat at home and clear your own plates. Also, according to the Dominic Montanelli, owner of a pizzeria, he says also, yes, that tipping should be mandatory at least 10%, and you have the option for 15 to 20% if you wish. The food industry pay scale is mainly based on tips from customers, and people unfortunately are unaware of this, especially when it comes to delivery drivers. There are many reasons to tip your server. One, you go out to eat for dinner to where you don't have to make it at home yourself, clean up your dishes or your mess, and then you proceed to run your server to death, who's also making sure that not only yours but every guest around them service and food has been the best that they could possibly give you at that time. Not only are they making sure that you have the best service, they've probably been belittled by another guest at some point in the day, which is that has decided not to tip them or tip them very little, which is very insulting. Servers receive very low wages to begin with, and not tipping them because you didn't feel the need to is, like I said, basically making them work for free. Also, not many people realize is that servers don't have the luxury of that 9 to 5 desk job that you may have. They may have certain reasons that they need the schedule that a serving life can provide for them. So there's reasons that they need these schedules. So keep in mind next time that you go out to eat to tip your server at least 10%, because you don't know what struggles they're going through. They're only making $2.13 an hour, and they make sure that you are receiving the best service that you can. And you don't expect to work for free at your job, so don't expect them to work it for free at their job. Thank you all for listening. I hope you all have a great rest of your evening.